spray painting has grown exponentially over the last few years with do-it-yourselfers, so I thought this would be a perfect time to share several tips that you need to know. Okay, the first tip is to always put on a pair of latex gloves just to protect your fingers, especially your fingernails, from getting paint all over them.
And you want to be my latex salesman.
And you need, of course, to shake the can until you hear that ball rattling. And according to manufacturers, once that ball is loose, you have to turn the can upside down and shake it for a full 60 seconds. All right? Well, I shook this one earlier before we started shooting, so I know it's all shaken up. Pop off the top. Now, you could just use the spray tip in your finger to apply the paint, but if you have a slightly larger project, you're painting lots of little projects, you can get much more control with an auxiliary handle. I don't know if you're familiar with these. You can get them at any hardware store, home center, only a few bucks each. And it's basically a little trigger for the can. There's a little opening, and that snaps right onto the can. Just make sure, of course, that the spray tip is facing this opening. And now you have a nice big trigger handle instead of that little button. If you're painting indoors or any enclosed space, you have to use a respirator. There's a dual cartridge respirator, not a dust mask, but a respirator. So that's what they recommend you use if you're spray painting indoors. Okay, the next thing is you should stay 10 to 12 inches away from the surface. All right, so how do you know that? Well, a spray paint can is typically about 8 inches, so you have to go like 50% further, so you have to be out here somewhere. It seems like a pretty far distance, but that's what they want, so you can get a nice even coat of paint. And what you also want to do is apply 2 or 3 light coats instead of 1 heavy coat, because you reduce the chance of the paint dripping and running. Also, often people make the mistake of sweeping their arm almost in an arc. And of course, what's going to happen is you're going to get paint really heavy here and really light there. And so it's not going to get an even surface. And again, paint might run right down the middle. So what you want to do is stay perfectly parallel with the surface. And again, you want to do light coats. What I like to do is start and stop off the surface. Because if you try to start and end right on it, sometimes you get a buildup of paint. So here we go. You notice I'm on and off, spray right past the edge. Okay, nice even coating. Again, that's very light. You can still see the wood grain showing through, but that's okay because I'm going to put on at least 1 other coat. All right, once you're done, you do the whole thing. Pop this off and immediately wipe the spray tip. You see it's got a little paint on it, right? We're going to wipe that off while it's still wet, and there you go. You can put a little paint thinner or mineral spirits, which is the same thing, on the rag, but if you do it immediately, you see it'll become out clear. Now, the reason you do that is so that you can reuse this can. Otherwise, that paint might block the little hole on the end of the nozzle and you won't get the paint out. They used to recommend turning the paint can upside down and spraying, but what I've found is you wind up wasting a lot of paint. So I prefer this method. Just wipe it off, and that's that. It'll be ready to use. Now, if you do get a spray tip that is clogged, in fact, here's one, this was clogged, so I pulled off the clogged tip, and I put it in a jar with some paint thinner, mineral spirits, again, same thing. And I put it in and I let it soak for a few days. And by the way, whenever I use a glass jar in the workshop, I always wrap it in duct tape. So if I do drop it and it breaks, the glass won't go shattering all over, so that's just another tip. And so now we're gonna pull out that tip. Here's the one that was from that can. You can see it still has paint all over it. But hopefully that paint thinner has dissolved the paint that was clogging the tip. So get a wire and ream out the little fill spout at the bottom. And then for this, where the paint comes out, it's a little teeny tiny opening. The only wire I've found that works is a twist tie. So just pull off the paper or plastic that surrounds it, and just so they have the bare wire. Put that in and out a couple times to clear it. Then I usually just drop it back in there. It should be clean and clear of paint. Then I'll pull it out next time I need it. This was a primer. With bare wood, I always recommend putting 1 or 2 coats of primer, sand it lightly with 220 grit sandpaper, wipe off the sanding dust, apply a 2nd coat of primer, and then you can sand it lightly and apply the top coat. Other tip I wanted to show you is if you ever had a spray paint can or a can of lubricant and you get to the bottom of the can and no more paint's coming out, no more lubricant's coming out, and you know there's some in there, you can hear it. Well, here's the reason why. The tube, the fill tube that's inside the can, comes down and it's curved to one of the corners. And if you look at the top of the spray paint can, almost every spray paint can has a little dot. You see that? That's a little blue or black dot right there. This is the lubricant. Here's a dot as well. So what that dot is showing you is that the manufacturers put that in there to show you that the spray tube, the end of the spray tube is in this corner, kind of, this side of the can. So it comes down from that dot there. So if you're spraying this way, the opposite direction, you're not going to get any lubricant out because the spray tube is on this corner. So what you want to do is rotate the nozzle to align with that little dot, and you'll get every bit of lubricant or paint out of that can. If you enjoyed this video, please support us by liking and subscribing. And I'd like to send a special shout out to our growing list of subscribers. Thank you very much. We appreciate each and every one of you.